Oh, here we go, fellas.
All right, it's 1-800-HOT-NIGHT.
Let's ring. Take it, baby.
You've called 1-800-HOT-NIGHT. What took you so long?
I want to ask you for some advice, because I think they're going to take me to a foster family, but I don't want to.
I gotta go.
No. Just wait. Don't hang up, please.
They ain't gonna take you. I won't let him.
And I won't let him either. All right, we're the 57 posse.
So, you wanna go back there or what?
I can't.
Kid, breathe, okay?
They took him.
Took who, Tommy?
Make your own decisions, kid. Be a man, that's what men do.
On today's show, engineer turned indie writer-director Nick Richey talks about his freshly released feature, 1-800-HOT-NIGHT, and delves into finances, distribution, and what it takes to bring art to life. Find the full transcripts and more at thepracticalfilmmaker.com. I'm your host, Tanya Musgrave, and today we're talking indie features with Nick Richey, who just recently finished 1-800-HOT-NIGHT, based on his life as a 13-year-old who embarks on an urban odyssey to escape foster care with the help of a phone sex operator. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
So that's quite a deep well to dive directly into. So let's get to know you a bit better first. Though,
Sure.
this might also be a loaded question, but how did you get to this point in your life?
Well, I grew up in Vancouver, Washington. So I was just right across the street from Portland, Oregon. Grew up in a, small kind of poor community, a Section 8, based apartment building. It was sort of a dead end street with just nothing but apartment buildings, and I had a really diverse, eclectic friend group and diverse set of experiences. My older brother and I were the first two in our family to go to college, and I stayed in Portland, went to Lewis and Clark College, and actually got a degree in economics. I always loved storytelling, always loved performing, needed money to pay for school. I was working 2 jobs, still wasn't covering everything. And so I saw an audition to host the Kids WB up in Portland. And I went down to the Aquatic Center, auditioned, got the part of the host in the Kids WB.
Get out.
True story. So I was like in between Pokemon being like, next up is this, and then the A paper contest is this week. Send in your A papers and you can win tickets to Disney on Ice or something. So it was a hilarious job. Hilarious because I also sort of have a deeper, I think more intimidating voice. And my co-host was like a 14-year-old girl. And so it was just like, clearly I knew I was going to get fired. I was like, they're going to keep her. They're going to get rid of me. And they did. But before that happened, there was an agent that had reached out to me, seeing me on television, asked if I'd be interested in taking acting class and having an agent. And I was in my senior year of college at that point, had just, done an internship for Boeing in the integrated defense systems, wanting to become a parametric estimator for the Defense Department, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah. That was my track. So I've obviously veered way off course. Okay. I started taking acting class in Portland. And what happened was I started getting introduced to casting directors, and, one casting director in particular said, "Hey, look, I know you've got this job offer from Boeing. You graduate in a couple months, but I think you should come down to Los Angeles for a couple of months and audition." From the day I graduated Lewis and Clark, May 8th, 2005, so I'm aging myself now, until August, I basically had this 3-month period to go down to Los Angeles, sleep on a friend's floor, which I did. I was in a sleeping bag on the floor of his place and went and just auditioned. And one of my first auditions in Los Angeles, I booked the lead role in this horror film by Gail Ann Hurd, who's a very legendary producer. She produced the Terminator franchise. She produces The Walking Dead. And next thing I know, I'm on a plane to Fiji to shoot this film and not going to be going back to Boeing. And so that's what really got me to Los Angeles. It was sort of a series of fortunate events that brought me here. And then through the process of acting, I really started to find that I wanted to be behind the camera. I wanted to tell stories in that way. And so I started writing and teaching myself how to write, and kind of low-key directing really bad little short things with my friends that never saw the light of day, but you start to cut your teeth. And back then it was like a bad flip phone. You couldn't make movies on your phone, It was like the Motorola Razor, or some, you know what I mean? That's what it was. Yeah. It was very pixelated, like a Nintendo video game. But I went and acted in another indie feature, and I came back and said, I want to kind of write and co-direct, produce this TV show idea. And it was a funny little thing. And I got Dick Van Dyke to come act in it. And we shot this thing. Yeah, it was super cool. And I just met him kind of dinking around in Malibu, you know, and he's such a sweetheart of a guy that he came in. I said, would you come do this like spec pilot with me, through a friend of mine who knew him also. And he came and he filmed the show with us. In the show, we rob his house and he plays himself. And so he catches us and ties us up. And
oh my gosh, that's amazing.
It was a comedy. And so I was trying to steal stuff so I could get money for a nose job. And he ends up giving this lecture about how he was told and this is a true story, actually, he overheard the producer of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang talking to the director in the next room while he was getting his makeup done, that why have we hired this guy? His nose is way too big. No one's going to like him on TV.
Oh, no.
And so he tells my character in this pilot, like, don't do it, you know, just be yourself. So anyway, this was kind of me dipping my toes in the water there on the writing, directing side. And then over time, I continued to just practice and practice and practice, and writing kind of came faster. I had gotten a script optioned with a great producer at Sony, and ended up getting a couple TV shows picked up for development at CBS Studios and ABC Studios, respectively, which was really great. And then in between that, again, like directing a little commercial stuff I have a producing partner, and then finally kind of deciding, hey, look, the TV development side is a rough road. And basically the way it works in TV is you can develop this thing for 2 years. If the network decides or the studio decides not to move forward, you're kind of back to square one, and no one gets to see it. It just doesn't get to live. And I thought, well, I have to make a feature film. So about 3 years ago, I wrote and directed my first feature film called Lolo, that was released theatrically in a couple of cities, New York, Los Angeles. And we did like a road show up the West Coast and in Las Vegas and a few other places. Right now it's streaming on Paramount Plus. And then the pandemic hits. You know, my wife and I were looking to buy our first home in LA, which, you know, is sort of its own fresh hell. I don't, you know, for anyone listening to this, you know, try to be a millionaire before you try buying a house in Los Angeles. Otherwise, it's a real bummer. Otherwise, you're like, so you're saying I can live in this 400 square foot condo for $800,000? Wow.
Really? You shouldn't have.
Yeah, really bleak. So we were getting ready to buy this place, and we actually lost out on this house that we wanted. And we kind of said, you know what? I mean, I want to buy a house, sure, but like movies, you know? So we took what we had saved for a down payment on the house, and that was half of our financing for this new film, 1-800 Hot Night, that I wrote and directed. We went and kind of nickel and dimed the budget together and got some amazing actors, and we shot the film. And now we have a great distributor in Quiver Distribution. The movie comes out November 4th. We've had a spectacular festival run, which I'm really grateful for. And in our final festival screening, we're a marquee film at the Austin Film Festival this week. So we close out the festival on November 3rd.
Oh, what nice.
Yeah, it's really fun. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thanks so much. So we're just really excited, and it's been a bit of a Byzantine road to get to this. I almost became a parametric estimator for the Boeing Company, was a host for the Kids WB shortly, acted in a few films, got tied up with rope by Dick Van Dyke, and then eventually ended up writing and directing my own features.
That's the most ragtag.
Yeah.
So you didn't go to school for this. You really kind of like learned how to knit your parachute while you were falling.
Yeah, or I think I really just kind of belly flopped into like a swamp or something. I don't really know if I even had a parachute. I think I've definitely been kicked in the stomach a few times, and while I've been here, you know, this is I guess it's what. So if I moved here in 2005, I don't even want to say it out loud. It's sort of 17 years of. You
want me to say it? Okay, all right.
Yeah,
17 years.
17 years of Los Angeles, but I love the city. It's just. Mm-hmm. Yes, I did not have any prior education on this side of things. I basically read books. Yeah. You know, tested out, wrote and wrote every single day, read about directing, found the resources, talked to directors, talked to DPs, and have tried to sort of, stitch together a toolbox that would allow me the opportunity to tell the stories I want to tell.
When you say like you talk to like producers, talk to directors and that kind of thing, was it like the connections through your acting jobs that you did, or did you just like track them down somehow?
Sometimes through connections from acting jobs, yes.
Yeah.
Acting class, because a lot of people are multi-hyphenate. So
Yeah.
someone could be an actor and they're also a special effects, coordinator, and they also direct. And so there's a lot of that. I worked at a restaurant in Malibu called the Marmalade Cafe.
Mhm.
There I met producers. I met, a writer and who's someone who's become a longtime friend, a man named Randall Wallace, who wrote the movie Braveheart and became a mentor to me in a lot of ways. And people like that just sort of, being in the town. It's the benefit of living in Los Angeles. I mean, yes, you can write and direct from anywhere, but here you might just be having breakfast next to Christopher Nolan and strike up conversation because you happen to be wearing some obscure comic book t-shirt that he loves. Yeah. And now Christopher Nolan's your buddy and you're talking Phil. Yeah. So these kind of things happened, and there was never like let me give this opportunity to you, but it was a chance to bounce ideas. And there's times that you fall down really hard trying to get something created. And I've had those experiences multiple times where you're just, pretty heartbroken. And sometimes those people, the veterans that you get to meet, are able to put it into perspective for you and help pick you back up. Because when you're looking up to this person, you think, well, they must have just flown in on their private jet and everything went well. They're like, oh no, let me tell you all the ways I fell getting to this position. And it makes you realize you're definitely trotting a well-worn path.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like you have a very specific story in mind when you're talking about this. Like, do you mind if I ask?
No, yeah, absolutely. So like one great example, once I realized with my producing partner, Zach, that we really wanted to make this transition, and we had optioned a script. We'd raised some money, put some money together, and optioned a script from a writer that we thought was really great. And we got some spectacular people involved, and I kind of saw a path to getting the movie made. And we were trying to make it for, $5 million, which is a lot of money. We didn't have $5 million. We had a couple $100,000 of seed money to try to make this happen. And without, getting into crazy detail, we just weren't able to attract the cast we needed to justify the budget. And the project fell apart, and we really ran out of real estate. That's when you're optioning scripts, you have a runway, and when that runway runs out, they can decide not to let you continue with it. And at that point, we'd spent all this money, really put our hearts into this thing, and it didn't go. And we're sitting there, just going, oh my God, what have we done? We would have been better off like spending $250,000 on some lenses, and just rented those out. And then it's a real investment. Now this is just flushed down the drain. And I remember going to Randy and telling him about it as I'm like serving him eggs at the Marmalade Cafe and being like, hey man, this just happened. I'm really sad. And he just basically opened up and said, look, how many movies I've had like greenlit, quote unquote, put my whole life on hold. I'm in the location. I've like floats where, and it falls apart, and it's in, you have to understand that every one of those things is essentially a new part of graduate school. Like think of it as film school, and you just got this really, really valuable knowledge. And yes, maybe it cost $250,000, but that's what people have to pay. So you're not special. You paid what everyone has to pay in this industry, to go through the fire. It was tough to hear, but it was also correct. He's not saying that everyone's got to go lose $250,000. He's saying that your experience is not unique in that, but what matters is how you take the information and the knowledge you just gained and then do it better the next time. Because there will be a next time if you want there to be a next time. That was a specific experience where I think he really picked me up and helped me refocus and say, yeah, okay, that movie didn't work out. It's over. Next. And that put me back in the writing chair,
Yeah. That would be extremely encouraging coming from a writer who came from like Braveheart and Pearl Harbor and we were soldiers and like all of them. So.
Yeah, exactly. I know it really was. Cause I grew up, a Braveheart fanatic. I loved We Were Soldiers. I didn't love Pearl Harbor, but what are you gonna do?
What if I liked Pearl Harbor?
No, you love Pearl Harbor. That's good. You can love Pearl Harbor. It's not on my top. It's not on my top.
We'll leave it. We'll leave it there on the floor.
Yeah.
It can seem a little bit like a badge of honor sometimes, like having those failures, and people are just like, oh yeah, you're gonna fail, congratulations, kind of a thing. But it actually is quite helpful. I think one of the things that we try to accomplish, even just like talking one-on-one with these filmmakers, is knowing that it's okay to do whatever it takes to like invest in your career, or like, and if that includes Uber Eats, if that includes a full-time job or a part-time job on the side, like do what you need to do, kind of a thing. And I think the more that people can have a realistic view of what to expect, as in like, oh, hey, he was actually delivering food too, so like I'm not doing that bad.
No, and to speak to that, I still work. I have a job. It's a unique job where I restore ancient arms and armor for private collectors and for objects that are, historically significant. That pays my bills. And I would say this to anyone, whether you're acting, directing, writing, there's not a lot of middle class, and this is sort of a theme for the country in general. The middle class is disappearing in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And the unions are either being vilified by people that don't want to pay union rates, and thus are put in a tough position where they're not necessarily negotiating hard enough with streaming services who aren't paying residuals, or so finding that steady gig is becoming increasingly difficult. There's people like Ava DuVernay who was a marketing executive, and then made the transition. There's people like Bukowski who were like handymen or like plumbers, and then if you love what you're doing, you're going to find ways to do it. I mean, and I'm not putting myself in their company by any means, but in the sense of sacrifice, when I went to the bank, it was the most money I'd ever had in my bank account in my life to put a down payment on a house. And when I transferred it instead into a new bank account to finance a movie, I felt nothing. I felt truly nothing. My heart didn't beat faster. I didn't feel nervous. I felt like I was buying a Tootsie Roll at a 7-Eleven. Like it was the most mundane. And it's because I don't want to do anything else in my life. So what else could there's not a better scenario I could be putting myself in than getting back behind the camera and making that next film. And so, yeah, you're right. Whether it's whatever you have to do it, do it. Because if you're not willing to do that, you are in the wrong. you're on the wrong path. I hate to say it that cut and dry. And I don't think someone should give up because they don't feel like, would I sacrifice everything right now? No, but I like writing. Keep writing. Don't or keep directing or keep acting. It's not that. Yeah. Sometimes you find that, but you have to understand that there are people out there. Right now there's some kid being born into like a situation that's so difficult we can't even fathom it, poverty that's beyond our wildest dreams, and that young girl, young boy is like shot listing at the age of 10, and they are going to become a director, and they are going to, and that's your competition, or that's who's coming for the spot. They want it really bad, and hopefully you get to collaborate with them and not compete with them. But
we like that here.
yeah. But it's a reminder though that some people will die for their art, will sacrifice everything, and they don't mind working that side job. It doesn't, they don't mind, doing whatever it takes to give themselves another opportunity to direct a film or put a script out or act in, an episode of The Walking Dead.
So let's talk about that film, that you would sacrifice everything for. So tell us about 1-800 Hot Night.
I guess it was a couple years ago. I was writing a series of essays just about myself growing up. It was just kind of creative exercise. Wasn't doing it for anyone else, just for myself. But when I was 13, 14, in that age range, me and my friends would, cram into phone booths and call these phone sex operators. And there was one number in particular that was called 1-800 Hot FUCK. And so I would call this number. And then after, a couple minutes, we would, abruptly be hung up on. But I was writing an essay about this, and I thought how to make a really fun intro to a movie. And I knew I wanted to kind of, explore some of my childhood, some of my youth in an autobiographical way in a film. And again, pandemic's raging, sort of realizing I wanted to kick this script into high gear. So I really only having that first scene in my head just kind of jumped in and started writing the script. And all three of the lead characters, Tommy, O'Neill, and Steve, are in some ways all little different versions of me. And then in some ways also representing some benchmark friends or foes in my life. I always felt like there's some things that I saw or went through when I was young that really thrust me into adulthood too early. I was very interested in exploring that creatively, that point or that nexus point, right, where youth and adulthood sort of cross paths. And, adulthood is really that riptide. You don't really have a choice at some point, right? And it can happen from trauma, it can happen from joy, it can happen from many things. I don't think it's all just traumatic stuff. So when I went into this film, my approach was to do it with a sense of urgency. So to think, could I write this film that all takes place in one night, that explores some of these themes of crossing that threshold into adulthood, what it means to take responsibility for yourself, for your family, friendship breaking, friendship continuing, brotherhood. There was just, these were some of those things I wanted to explore. The first draft really was, close to what ended up being shot. It just was one of those scripts that really poured out of me and had a lot of truth in it right out of the gate. I have a writers group that I was hosting that met weekly. And so I workshopped some stuff with them. That was really the genesis. And I had my wife, who's also my producing partner, playing Ava, the phone sex operator. So, it's easy to workshop the character with her. She's there. We work well together. And then right away, I start going into shot listing. I'm just like, okay, I got to start building out the directorial side. And all these things kind of go hand in hand. You're almost doing them a bit simultaneously. But again, really knowing no matter what, we're going to make this film, whether we made it for just our own dollars or we're able to get other funds, which we were able to get, like matching funds basically. So this film, was shot for under $250,000, which, is a lot of money, but it's nothing. It's just a very little money to make a film, especially to make a SAG film. So you have to
children and at night.
yeah, exactly. With children and only shooting at night and in the height of summer, so it doesn't get dark until 9 p.m. And they have to be offset by midnight. So it's you only have 3 hours a night to shoot on an 18-day shoot. So it's just a lot of obstacles there. But Jeremy Gordon and Shayna Sherwood, Nicole Doro were our casting directors. They brought a spectacular cast to the table. I had some people in my back pocket that I worked with before, like Sean Kerrigan, who I worked with on Lolo, came in and acted. Like I said, Allie, Trevor Georgeson, who's a producer on the film also, but plays a character. These people I was able to just pop in and know that they were going to crush it. We followed the COVID protocols and luckily just no one got sick, and that was, no matter what, you're rolling those dice. So, but we were fortunate. We didn't get crushed by something.
Okay. I know that it can be like hit and miss with child actors. I would love to know like your best day on set. Can you remember like, we've got it?
Maybe my favorite day was shooting the phone booth, the opening scene.
Okay.
We had time. So every day felt so crammed, but that day was just so constricted to this phone booth that it, I didn't feel like I was in a rush. Being in that phone booth just threw me right back to childhood. Our friends delivered a bunch of fresh yerba mates in the cooler. So I had my favorite caffeinated beverage ready to go. The smoke machine was flowing. Yeah. Everything just worked. It was one of those days where it was just like, it just felt so good. Yeah. And it looked so good. That day and being on a miniature golf course was so fun. Those are kind of like my favorite days. And I'll say that, these kids never dropped a line. I mean, they were so professional, so dialed into their characters that they made my job so easy. Dallas, Garrison, and Mylan, who play the three, male leads, just, they have such a well that they're pulling from that I really felt like I was in good hands with them. Orly Gottsman and Jayla Walton, Shalay Brannon, and Maddie Adams play the 4 girls that are sort of in their life. So spectacular, so sweet, just great actors. They made it, again, just so easy for me. It was like, even back, all of these actors in their Zooms, you just knew. I said, this person, yes. It just all felt so good. And this happened across the board. I mean, there just wasn't a single person that created an issue.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice.
Just, really fortunate, really fortunate on that side of things.
There are plenty of things that go right, and there are also plenty of things that go wrong. One of my favorite things is to ask about the things that go wrong.
Everything goes wrong. Whoever's listening out there, if you're a director, understand that literally everything will go wrong. So plan and then have a B plan and have a C plan. Because if you don't, you are like hanging upside down, being dipped into the ocean by some torture device. I'll throw a couple examples at you. We had a location. A friend said, yes, you can shoot here. Great. Can't wait. Paperwork signed, whatever. 7 a.m. the day of the shoot. 7 a.m. the porta potty gets delivered. Well, apparently that caused a bunch of noise because the truck makes a beeping sound when it backs up and the porta potty comes down. The renter had signed the agreement, but the owner didn't. The landowner kicks us out. And so we got to be on set in a few hours to start rehearsing, and we're losing our location that day. We're so tight budgetarily, there's no such thing as losing a day. We can't lose a day. I don't have the money. I would have to sell my car to get cash to make up the money or take out a new credit card or something. I don't know. It's not an option, right? I didn't have a backup. And that's, again, this is what it comes down to, why you want to make sure as the director, you also, your producers have their stuff lined up. We didn't have the proper paperwork, right? And had we had the proper paperwork, it wouldn't have been a problem. Had I wrapped my brain around the fact that we didn't have it, then I should have had a backup plan, and I didn't. And then this is how the sort of movie gods shine on you in moments like this, is that the guy dropping off the porta potty is getting yelled at by the neighbors, and then we got to call him, and we're like, put the porta potty back on the truck. We don't know what to do. I'm so sorry. And he's like, well, how much are you paying him for this? Were you going to pay him for this location? We tell him, he goes, you can shoot at my house. And so the porta potty delivery guy takes us to his place out in Chatsworth, and it's an even better location. It's
Stop
like
this. What?
It was perfect. And in fact,
that's amazing.
Half of the opening, like, kind of montage of the film during the credit sequence was shot in this amazingly cool alleyway behind his house that was not in the script, but then ended up becoming a place where I could shoot this fun B-roll. So it just turned out to be like 10 times the location the other one did.
That's amazing.
So something that went terribly wrong, that swung. Now, things don't always swing. So, for example, on the last day of filming, which it's your denouement, you want it to be this wonderful night. You're going to have a martini shot and toast, and you think it's going to be this like beautiful hugs, and like instead it's just, again, everything goes wrong. Dallas pulls his hamstring. He can barely run, and it's this scene where he's like running to the power lines, and he gets kind of tackled. So the actor's injured. We're waiting for the sun to go down because we can't shoot in the daylight, right? Because we had to go rig up this light over on this other property, there's this like giant pit bull just barking. So that's going to ruin every shot. Then we have to have a police car drive in because the police are kind of like coming to find Tommy. So now it's dark. It's time to shoot, because once the sun drops, it's the ultimate ticking clock. You only have 3 hours to shoot, which is impossible, right? So shoot 6 pages in 3 hours. I mean, but Steven Spielberg shoots 2 pages in 2 days. It's a joke. It's like, wait, you got six pages in 3 hours. The production van, I'm like, we got to move this out of the way. Oh, the PA's lost the keys to the production van. There's only one way into the location. So now the cop car can't get in. So we can't start shooting because we can't find the keys.
Oh, my stars.
So just losing time. By the time we find the keys, get the van moved, now there's the dog barking and this homeless man sitting on the other side of the fence, and Allie's character Ava, the phone sex operator, is like on top of Dallas's character yelling at him. Well, this guy is yelling everything back, like mimicking it all back, ruining every take. And when he's not ruining a take, the dog is ruining the
Oh
take.
my gosh.
So, like, luckily, the neighbors on the other side of this fence, because this man was like yelling and screaming and it was late, the cops came and escorted him to, like, somewhere else, because he was probably a mental health crisis. I don't know. And we were able to go and ask, for the love of God, like, give this dog a bone or something so it'll stop barking at us. And it was just a total catastrophe of a night, like, to the point where I was almost in tears, where it's the end of the film. And we've gotten all the way to this point, which is already almost impossible in any way. So it was just a really rough final night. And because of it, I had to schedule a pickup shoot. We had to go back there another day because we just didn't get it. And I was lucky that, my actors had the time. And that is like the tip of the iceberg of the things that went wrong. There's this like tennis court that we were shooting at. That's like a basketball court, tennis court, where the boys are walking past it. And we wanted this like smoke machine, but so it was essentially what it did is it like melts these mineral oils and creates like a fog, and it dripped all over this tennis court and ruined it. So we had to pay to resurface this. I get just problem. Yeah. I mean, things that you just, that you just couldn't imagine. We have like this major prop that everyone listening, always have duplicates of your props. I don't care. Like, have duplicates. We're like getting toward the end of the shoot, and this prop is like a centerpiece of the film. It's
oh no.
And we lose it. It's gone. Our production designer can't find it. He goes home and like whittles one out of wood to match the plastic one, paints it. I mean, it's a perfect replica. It's shockingly good. But luckily, again, one of our other castmates, this is just to go to show you how random this world is. We lose it. We're up till like 3 a.m, driving down streets looking for it, trying to find it. One of our actresses, Kimley, if Kimley ever listens to this, you're an angel, was going for her regular Sunday walk, and she found the hammer in like a gutter. I know.
What?
I know. Well, I don't know what the odds are. We were shooting in her neighborhood. She just happened to be a few blocks, and so it clearly got put on the roof of a car.
Oh my gosh.
The car, it fell off, ends up in this gutter. She's walking, picks up and finds it.
Mercy. Production brain is a thing, because I have completely put my production binder on top of my car, and I like would see pages fly off in my rearview mirror, and I'm just like, those looked important. Sure enough, they were. You're like chasing papers down the highway. It's the most ridiculous thing. How movies get made is beyond me. Like, just random stuff, like the porta potty guy. Like, that's fantastic. But you're just like, okay, you could have never seen that coming, obviously.
No.
But
no, it's impossible, right?
Yeah.
It's just like an impossible thing that happens. But you're just like, how did that? How did that work out? But so those are just a lot of things. A lot of things went wrong, and then things went wrong in the screening. I mean, we were in Deauville, one of the most spectacular film festivals in the world, and we're screening to 1,500 people in a sold-out theater in the coast of France, and you're like, "This is my dream come true." The movie starts playing, and it's too dark, and it was the DCP got messed up. Imagine a DC film. Yeah. You see it? Okay, great. Just like that. Yeah, like a DC. No, but it was so... Or what the long night, the Game of Thrones episode where everyone said they couldn't see.
Oh, yeah. Everyone's like...
Yeah. This was...
Turning up the brightness.
Yeah, this was like... I'm hoping this is going to be like that big, glorious moment. And I'm just sitting there wanting to rip my hair out because the footage is too dark. I got to call our DCP place, get a new one sent over because something got messed up in the settings.
Dang.
And it was because we didn't have time to test it before we got to the theater, because I was gone on other festivals, then had to go straight to France. So it was just like...
Did you stop the screening?
No, you had to let it go because I didn't have anything to substitute it for. I had to just sit there and
cringe,
painfully be tortured by this moment, and it, again, just heartbreaking stuff, just never stops. So.
and like those are the moments that your blood just runs cold too, because you can't do a thing about it. It's rough.
Can't do a single thing about it.
Yeah.
You just have to watch it happen.
Yeah. You mentioned Lolo, and that is also kind of a similar like coming of age flavor, you know, when it comes to confronting like sex violence and like uncertain future, right? Would you say this is like a direction that your passion is compelling you towards, or like kind of like artistic purpose, or is this just like, no, I think I just wanted to explore it, you know, that kind of a thing?
Yeah, I think sometimes it feels like a little bit of both. This particularly was, both of these were sort of exercises and exploration. And from the writing perspective, wanting to dig in on some of the, I guess, psychological elements that I've thought about, and
Mm-hmm.
also dig into some of the, milieu that I grew up in,
Yeah.
and show that on screen. I don't think it's really truthfully shown very often. And I was hoping to kind of bring some truth to that world. I think most of the time when we see young boys and young girls on screen, their parents are always like doctors and like commercial real estate agents, and they're all doing really well and they live in houses, and that's just not the world that I grew up in. And similarly, even like with a project like Lolo, thinking about the young women that I grew up with were very powerful young women, very strong. They commanded their worlds, and I think most high school girls are portrayed as kind of weaker and sort of subservient to the boys. And my experience growing up was the exact opposite, which was that the girls were very powerful. They determined who was cool. They determined what was cool, and they fought and they had sex and they did drugs and they were intimidating, and you wanted to be in their company. You wanted to be in their circle and things like that. And I compare them against like Euphoria, where everyone's just sexy and crazy, and it's like, wow, and everyone's it's obviously that's like a very elevated sort of fantasy world of
The gritty part of what actually happens.
yeah. Whereas I was kind of hoping to more like get mired in the sort of smaller reality. It's not easy to do, obviously, and I hope that audiences are able to connect with both. And similarly with 1-800 Hot Night, look, my next project that I'm shortlisting now, I'm getting ready to direct, hopefully kind of late spring next year, is what I'm eyeing, is about, a lesbian couple in Oklahoma that kidnaps a boy from a meth house and takes him on a run, and they kind of become a family on their way to Corpus Christi, Texas. And it's kind of a Thelma and Louise, like adventure thriller, while the dad of this boy chases them. The script I wrote after that is a historical fiction about the overthrowing of the Honduras government in 1911, and this like monster in the jungle starts killing people. So it's like very different, very, very different. But I was interested in sort of exploring like some of the foundations of corporate colonialism in Central America, and this was like a fun way to do it. And so I think sometimes kind of like following my inspiration. So if something really speaks to me, whether it's through a book I read or an essay I wrote or something, and I'm wanting to go further, then I'll get down to it and start hitting the pages, and then that'll sort of guide me. And so the why for me is really, I love collaboration. I love being in a team. I don't even have to be the leader of the team. In these cases, directing, you are the leader of the team, but I really enjoy being a part of a collaborative, creative process. Like for me, when a story starts to form in my head, I have to tell the story. It feels like it has to come out of me or I'm going to like explode. That is what keeps me going. I get inspired by art, by books, by music, and I want to be a part of that community, and I want to contribute maybe to somebody else's life. And if it's one or two people that see Lolo or see 1-800 Hot Night and it helps them want to be a filmmaker, then I feel like that's a huge win. A big positive.
We're going to talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of things now. So like, I know several people who have now finished their first and even second feature films, and they're kind of along a spectrum. You talked a little bit about this, like about how you funded, like self-funded, like done in conjunction with an educational entity that funds it, or even a studio that might greenlight it. There's like a whole spectrum. So I'm curious where 1-800 Hot Night and Lolo fell, even when it came to distribution, and how you came to make a deal, distribution deal.
Yeah, so both Lolo and 1-800 Hot Night were made for the same budget range, $250,000, very cheap movies. They're independent dramas. So if you're not making a genre film, it is really difficult to sell an independent drama today with no celebrities in it. It's obviously different if, Kate Winslet is in your movie or something, or Ryan Gosling. You're going to have a much different outcome than with, kind of no-name actors. There's movies out there that have been made, like Beasts of the Southern Wild, that did really well with no known actors in it, but there were very powerful people that start pushing behind these movies, and all of a sudden, you see like Plan B Entertainment or Barry Jenkins, or you start to look at some of these independent, you're like, boy, these are really major producers that are, pushing these through. It's a little bit of like which is great, by the way. It's just it's like a little cheat code they get to have for their indie film, where other indie films that are like don't have that contact, don't have that person championing them. It is really, really hard right now in the current environment because streamers have the most money and they're not really buying. They're licensing for cheap, but they're not really buying anymore. They're making their content in-house. Companies like A24 and Neon, they're not really buying indie films out of festivals. They're not like going, and it's all kind of a lie in a way. Like a lot of these deals that get announced at Sundance, the deal was already made before Sundance. They're just announcing it at Sundance, so it looks like it was made at Sundance. And so I think in a practical sense, know this going into it. Know that basically nobody wants your independent film. And if you can go into it knowing that, and you still want to make it great, then you're making it because you love this film and you have to get it out. Now, can you still get a distribution deal and have it go out and do something great? Yes, of course. And then there's where comes the hope. But I think you should be prepared to do a lot of the legwork yourself. So I'll give you this example. With Lolo, we did not get a cash offer for the movie. It was strictly a revenue share deal, right? And so a revenue share deal typically looks like, hey, we'll take 20%, you'll take 80% of every dollar that comes in. But we have marketing expenses, by the way. So we got to recoup those first, right? And they kind of, so when you're negotiating those contracts, you need to put a marketing cap on there and you need to audit them. I think a lot of people mean well, and then they just start taking your money, and they justify it. I'm being honest with you. I don't think they're like actually, I don't think people look at themselves as evil or doing bad. I think they are looking at their business and going, well, I did do all this work and and next thing you know, you're not getting the money you're supposed to get for your movie. And so those are things I think you have to be responsible for following up on those things. So in a situation like with Lolo, it's a straight TVOD, streaming type deal with an 80-20 split. And we retained our own theatrical rights. So we put a little budget together, put a budget aside to release theatrically in Los Angeles and New York, and to go do a road show, like a publicity show. Yeah. That helped us get reviews and get kind of like Rotten Tomato certified reviews. We did these event screenings in cities that we knew we could like pack the house, right? So Seattle, Portland, I'm going to the Northwest where I've got friends and family, in Phoenix, Arizona, where one of my producers is from, right? So you're hitting these kind of benchmark cities that are also good film cities. Yeah. You've got to kind of start to look at distribution as a hybrid. I was calling news stations saying, I'm going to be in Portland this day. Our movie's showing there. Can I come on Good Morning America there? Sure. All of a sudden I'm on the news in Portland and Seattle and in Arizona and Las Vegas. And these are really great things. These are great opportunities. So anyway, these are the kinds of things that like, I think you should be prepared to do and to have your movie achieve some success. And Lolo had this really great critical success where like NPR Film Week and Variety and LA Times, some of these very respected reviewers that I always was excited about really responded well to the film. And, it could go the other way, by the way. They could have hated it and I would have cried. It's not up to me. But then, following up with 1-800 Hot Night, you're just back to square one. You're going, okay, well, let's go. And so I took what I learned from Lolo and made a new film, and Hot Night got into some bigger festivals, so that's where that film festival circuit can be really helpful. We had a world premiere at Santa Barbara International, and then, played at Dead Center and Dances with Films and Woods Hole in Massachusetts and Deauville in France, obviously, and now Twin Cities Film Festival and Hell's Half Mile. It just kind of kept going in Portland and Vashon Island. And now we're playing at the Austin Film Festival. And so then people start to pay attention. For this deal with Quiver, we similarly did a revenue share deal that we were happy with because there were certain stipulations in there that made us feel like Quiver was really going to back this film. They really believed in it and they wanted to take it out and do what's best for it. And on top of that, playing in Deauville, playing in France, and getting French press and reviews has created a second scenario where now we're getting foreign distribution offers, and those are becoming lucrative. So the movie has this chance to make all of its money back just on foreign sales. You can kind of nickel and dime that out, where you can go to a film market like AFM, which will be, this weekend and going into next week. And there's a lot of buyers there. So you can go and host a screening of your film and have a one sheet ready. They're looking at it, not that different than the US market. They're going, this is an indie drama, no stars. Okay. Maybe we'll just do a revenue split, or we'll give you $10,000 for Italy and $20,000 for South Korea and $40,000 for Latin America. So you can kind of like carve it up and sell these chunks out.
Yeah.
Or you can work with a foreign sales agent who takes 20%, but then they have a little bit bigger Rolodex, and they're the ones out there negotiating for you. And they're, of course, incentivized to some degree to get you the best deal possible.
Gotcha.
But I truly think as an independent filmmaker, assume you have to do it all yourself. And as long as you keep that mentality, and even when someone comes aboard, you are still going to be responsible for getting the word out. You're still going to be responsible for the follow-up. Nobody's ever going to care about your film more than you. So protect it, protect your art, because even that financial success of it is the opportunity to make another film, and another film, a lot of one and done, because it's just, the expectation is so ludicrous, right? Hey, you want to be a director? If you're a prolific director, one of the most prolific directors in the world, maybe you get to make 8 films in your lifetime.
Yeah.
8. That's not enough times to practice. 8? You know what I'm saying? Like, what are we doing here? This is insanity.
Yeah.
Why a lot of people say, if you want to break into the business, make a horror film. There's a reason they say that. And it's because there's a built-in audience there that doesn't need a celebrity. They're just stoked to support the new horror film. So if you can make one for cheap and make your money back, well, then you've signaled to the world, the filmmaking world, that like, hey, legitimate filmmaker, if you give me money to make another film, I have a track record. I'm one of one for getting you your money back. And now you get to make another film where do I think if Christopher Nolan made The Following today, would people care? If Robert Rodriguez made El Mariachi today and put it out, do I think like it would move the needle? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, now first-time filmmakers are making like $40 million movies, and with special effects. There's, and I don't know. I think it's changed a lot. I think there was a time where people said, "Yeah, we get it. You like did this with nothing. You made a movie for 10 grand. Well, here, let's support you now. Let's build you up." I don't know if that's existing as much anymore. So I say that to say, like, it's on you as the director, it's on you as the writer and the producer or director, whatever your position is, to see it all the way through, and don't assume anyone's going to come with like a magic wand and go, well, now that you made your movie, let me take it over from here. I'm gonna, and
I'll take your money now that you've already done all the hard work.
That's more realistic. That here, now you've done all this hard work, you spent your life savings. I'm going to bleed you now. I'm going to vampire you. I'm going to Dracula your ass. Expose your neck for me, please.
Make it easiger for me.
And so those are some of the realities. I think there's just a ton of beautiful, wonderful filmmakers out there. Again, just coming back from Deauville was this magical experience where I met just some really spectacular writers and directors I really loved spending time with and was able to commiserate with and feel supported by and support. And so I think too, as you go out there making projects, it starts to attract other filmmakers and friends. And so there's a really beautiful side to it also.
So you were talking a little bit about finances, and we're just going to dip into this. For somebody who is wanting to create their own film, like what could they expect to budget for themselves? Like you've kind of alluded to the fact of like, hey, whatever it takes, but at the end of the day, do you reserve some of that for like seed money for your next one? Or like, do you pay yourself for all that time? I mean, yes, you have your full-time job, but like, is there a trade-off in there? And like, what's the pivot point for that for you?
Yeah, I mean, so full disclosure on both films, I no, I didn't pay myself. I paid other people.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
was
I mean,
investing in both of them.
and that's
Yeah.
good. That, I mean, like when you invest in the smarter people in the room, kind of a thing. You know, you get
Yeah.
you get the good people.
Yeah, and I think this next film, I am raising money and not investing myself, but
Mm-hmm.
feel like I've invested in these last two films to prove I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
This next film, we have some investment backing, and that I will pay myself from that. And I think
Yeah.
there are some standards, 5% of the total budget for a director, or 5% for a writer. So if you're the writer director,
Mm-hmm.
but you're not going to want to give yourself 10% of a low budget because you want the money to go to the screen. So you'll probably
Right.
take 5% overall.
Right.
So if you're doing a $5 million movie, paying yourself $250,000,
Mm.
you could look at that and go, oh, that's a lot of money. That might be a bit much, but it's not. It's nothing. You're going to work on this thing for 2 years after taxes, living in Los Angeles.
Yep.
You just rented yourself a 1-bedroom apartment. That's it.
Mhm.
You're not doing
Yeah.
anything special here. You're just living. So I would say don't undervalue yourself in that sense. And, I will be working that in more on like a standard rate. And there's things out there like WGA, DGA rates that exist out there that you can use as a benchmark too, right? So
Yeah.
you can say,
Yeah.
you can lean on those things and say, well, look, I know I'm making this independent film. You go out and you fundraise $1 million to make your indie first feature, and maybe you don't have a job that's flexible. So you actually have to quit your job to take this job. So you do need money. That's where I think it's a good idea to start leaning on those DGA minimums and say, well, look, if it's $60,000, like that gives me some time to make this movie and not, driving Uber every hour I'm not on set, because that's hard. It's just hard, or whatever, whatever the side hustle is. So, and on the writing side, if you're out there like the TV shows scenario, I mean, if you're out there trying to sell a show, my last two negotiations were, $100,000 for the pilot script. And then my follow-up show was co-written, and we negotiated $250,000 for the script split, right? So it's about, what's a 125 each. So I think, if you're out there writing and trying to sell something to a network, I think you can, despite what they tell you, you can pretty much get yourself to like a 6-figure for the pilot salary, nothing below 75,000. And
dang, we should have you back to talk about writing, just writing.
Yeah. Well, it's a really nerve-wracking process, because when you're a writer or a director and you're kind of getting those first jobs, and the studio's sort of legal department can feel like a bully, and feel like without fail happens where like the producer that you're working with at that studio starts calling you going, hey, why are you going to blow this deal up asking for more money? What, you want more points? You want a better credit? Fight for your credit. Fight for your points. Fight for your salary.
Yeah.
They're lying. It's a negotiation technique. Like, don't buy it, man. And if they want to walk away, fucking walk away. Bye. Yeah. I'll sell it to someone else then, tell them to walk away. Value yourself. And if you value yourself, other people will value. And it took me quite a bit longer than it should have to realize that. I have no problem investing in myself. I'll spend every dollar making the projects. But when you're out there on the sales side and you've got a script, or you're going to get hired as a director, push the boundary, push them as high as you can get them to go. When I saw how Netflix was paying these like executives that had not a creative bone in their body, and they're like throwing $500,000 at them like it's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and then they're paying their like writing staff and their actors like nothing. I understood why their stock price plummeted, and you go, oh, right. You guys aren't getting it. You guys aren't really getting how this works. The talent's over here. Yeah. They'll leave you because Jeff Bezos has more money. Eventually Amazon will just pay you more, pay these artists more, or Disney will. You'll get poached. The executives are fungible, man. These guys, they lose their job every year. Try to track one down. You'll pitch to one person that's like a development executive at one studio, and then they're at another place next year and another place next year. They're all over the place. I don't know if they're getting fired or promoted. I mean, whatever. It could be all kinds of things, but like your ally is not there typically, fight for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're going to ask about the tools of your trade and gear and gadgets, your favorite old reliable or resource or app or software, all that fun stuff. Whichever.
I really love Studio Binder, actually. I use it for shot listing. I use it for scheduling. I think it's a great one-stop shop. I love their YouTube channel. I kind of use Studio Binder for everything. I get inspired by it. They'll do Denis Villeneuve YouTube breakdown for 30 minutes on, his shot selections in his films and how he uses these angles it makes you want to go out and be a better filmmaker. So Studio Binder for me is a big one. There is a website out there called Shot Deck. Not too many people have heard about it. It's still like in beta phase, but I would suggest going and if you're a director, going and making an account because it's beautiful still images of all your favorite movies, a lot of your favorite films. It tells you when you click on one, it's got all this metadata that tells you what it was shot on, exterior, interior, what lenses it was shot on, what camera it was shot on. So as you start to storyboard and you're looking for I've never had a storyboard artist, can't afford it, right? So everything I've done has been using still images that already exist to kind of try to embody the shot that I'm thinking about and then just verbally explaining it. Shot Deck has really changed that for me where now I really can pull out these spectacular images that have the right texture and then have the right data. So I'm able to say to my DP or to my crew, well, they used this type of light.
Right.
To create this orange glow. So maybe we don't use a sodium vapor this time. Maybe we use this with a gel or something, whatever it might be. So those are kind of two favorites on that.
And your favorite new gadget that revolutionizes how you work. That might be the one. Shot Deck might be that. But
yeah.
Or your like favorite industry related new purchase. I don't know, anything.
A company called Atlas put out some very affordable lenses. And we got a set of anamorphic lenses for very, very cheap compared to what anamorphic lenses would cost anywhere else. And I think they're a beautiful set of lenses. We shot low on those lenses.
What's their price range, if you don't mind?
So like the 42 millimeter Mercury series anamorphic, $5,000. A 3 lens set, $15,000 for a 36, a 42, and a 72. But like just saying that's very cheap.
Yeah.
We bought a 3 lens package,
nice.
And used money that we got from commercial directing gigs to finance that. So it wasn't like coming out of pocket. We kind of got a gig and took the money and
absolutely.
So it's always like having good glass ready to go. You can kind of go shoot anything.
Yeah.
And I will say too, like we shot another, for gadgetry, the Sony A7S Mark III is just such an accessible camera price wise.
Yeah.
The sensor's amazing. You can shoot in like the lowest light imaginable. So I would highly, highly recommend if you can get your hands on one, you're looking to shoot your first feature. I think it's a great, great camera. And then just get yourself some, decent glass.
And the question that I like to wrap up every interview with, what questions should I have asked you?
How do you know where to like trust your instincts on casting? I think that's a situation where like you can hire a really great casting director and have really great casting directors, but follow your instincts and I will say this, I have friends, I won't name names. They're amazing people. Some of my best friends, and they just get wrapped up in beauty. So some beautiful man or beautiful woman gets in front of the camera and they're like, got to cast that person. I'm like, were you watching the same thing I watched? Because like, and
still you're beating hard and pay attention next time. Okay, take 2.
Casting from the directorial standpoint is so critical. And I think being a great director starts with being great at casting and knowing who's going to bring truth to your roles, because those are the people that are, they are the conduit for the story. Once you call action, and you can set up the most beautiful shot in the world, but if someone's sitting there, like a robot, you are dead in the water. I mean, there's no victory there. So like, I would say that one of the most critical aspects is finding a casting director that you trust and then totally distrust them in the casting room so that you are like really redlining everything they say to make sure that you are truly getting the best person for you, also someone that you feel like you can dip into their well and draw a performance out of. So, that would probably be that last thing of like casting.
Nice.
Casting. Yeah.
Nice. Well, we really appreciate you being on the show. How do people find you or follow your work?
Kind of easiest place is Twitter and Instagram. Twitter is just at Nick_Richey. Instagram is Nick Richey, the number 8 on those social media platforms. I have a website. It's www.halfwaycrooksent.com. And the film has their own webpage, 1-800-HOT-NIGHT film. So there's a couple ways.
Well, extremely fantastic advice and tangible practicalities that we love here for our upcoming directors. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and for your time.
Thanks so much. Pleasure.
1-800-HOT-NIGHT is now available on iTunes and Amazon or anywhere else you can buy or rent. And Lolo is streaming on Paramount+. If you enjoyed this interview, follow us right here and on Instagram, ask us questions, and check out more episodes at thepracticalfilmmaker.com. Be well and God bless. We'll see you next time on The Practical Filmmaker.